Hello and welcome to another running shoe review. My name is Sean. Today I'm going over the Adidas Adizero Takumi Sen 8. Adidas definitely wins for having the longest names by having Adizero in there as well as the name of the shoe. But one of the questions today too is this the best tempo shoe that's out there right now? So to bury the lead a little bit, yes and no. It depends on what you're trying to do. So a little bit of information about this shoe, starting with the upper. This has Adidas Cellular Mesh upper, which again is made from partially recycled materials. It's a very plasticky kind of upper, very thin, very lightweight. It is a fully gusseted tongue. The tongue really doesn't move at all because it's kind of stitched into the upper. It's also a very, very thin tongue. So that's kind of one negative of this shoe is if you tie these laces tight, you're going to have pressure on the top of your foot because there's really not any padding in this tongue. It's a very thin tongue, but it doesn't move. It stays in place. And one thing that I found is this shoe fits rather tightly. It's pretty narrow in the midfoot, so I actually don't have to tighten it down that tight at the top because it's really holding my heel in well just because it's so tight in the midfoot that there's no heel slippage in this at all. This has a very flexible heel. There's really no support in that heel counter. What seems to be strange for me though is the more flexible the heel counter is, it seems the better the heel lock I get in it. This one I basically get my heel in there, it sits right in place and doesn't move at all. So I actually get a really good lockdown with this shoe without having to tie it that tightly. So I don't use a runner's knot when I use this shoe. I just passed 80 miles on this shoe today in the run that I did. I did a Yasso 800 workout. So I did about a 3-mile warm up at kind of an easy pace, like 8 to 8:30 pace, and then was doing intervals of 800 meters at more like 5K pace, and then recoveries in between each of those. So 10 of those took me to about 11 miles total for the workout today. So I think this shoe actually kind of took me on a journey with 3 different parts of that run. So I'll get to that when I get into the ride. But a little more about the upper. It has that cellular mesh upper, some overlays. There is some kind of structure that they give to it here. I feel that this really wraps your foot really well, holds you in there nice and tight. The shoe does run a little bit long. It comes to a point a little bit in my 12 and a half. My toe ends up being right about here, so I do have a little bit more room. I probably could have got a 12 in these and got away with it, but they're fine for me in the 12 and a half. So next to the midsole, this is probably the most interesting thing about this shoe. So this has Light Strike Pro, which is Adidas Super Foam. That also appears in the Adios Pro, the Prime X, and their other higher models. But there's less of it in this shoe. This is probably the closest to more of a traditional racing shoe to anything that I have. All these modern shoes have the higher stack, the carbon plates. This has a stack of 33 millimeters in the heel and 27 in the forefoot, which is a 6 millimeter drop. So a lot of these shoes end up with an 8 or 10 millimeter drop, so this being a 6 millimeter drop, less of a drop. It feels much more natural though. One thing that I actually found too is since the stack is lower, I actually pronate less in this shoe. So I've seen some people say this shoe is not stable. There's some cutouts in the bottom there. It's very narrow in the midfoot and the heel, but to me, just the fact that the stack is lower and my foot is locked in so well, the stability of the shoe is actually pretty good for me. So I don't find it to be unstable, partly because of that lower stack height. So the midsole is Light Strike Pro. There are energy rods in this shoe, but it's different than their higher end models, which are carbon energy rods. These ones, you can hear it sounds kind of plasticky. They're basically plastic. These are nylon, plastic rods in there, so not the carbon rods. So it does add some stability to the shoe, but it is nowhere near as stiff as those carbon plate racers. This shoe is very flexible. You can twist from side to side. It is definitely a neutral shoe. So those rods in there give you some stability in the midsole, but they're really not adding that much pop to the shoe or stiffness to the shoe. So this is a much more neutral shoe, much more flexible than a lot of these carbon plate type racing shoes. So to the outsole, this Adidas has Continental rubber. So they have a big piece of Continental rubber on the front here where you're basically toeing off. So that's very durable right there. The rest of the rubber on the shoe is very thin and feels almost kind of tacky to the touch. But really great grip. All the Adidas shoes have excellent grip. So this, after 80 miles too, I'm really not seeing that much wear on any of the rubber. It's still looking really good. So a lot of durability from that outsole. Also in the midsole, there are some cutouts. There's a cutout here where the rods are showing through. They also cut out part of the side of the kind of the midsole here. And here's a bit of a ledge, in the midsole as well. And I would think that would affect my foot strike and how it feels when you're landing, but it really doesn't to me. This shoe feels very natural through the foot strike. So a little bit about the ride. What makes this kind of different from a lot of the carbon plate shoes is, since it's so much more flexible, it's very natural, and it's very light. This shoe in my size is 12.5, comes in at 8.17 ounces or 231 grams. And just for a quick comparison, I have a couple other shoes over here. The Vaporfly for me comes in at 8.45 grams. The Saucony Endorphin Speed is 9.56. That one's really more of a daily trainer, more of a plush upper, so a little bit more weight there. And this is the New Balance Fuel Cell Rebel 2. That's 8.48. So of these shoes, this one coming in at 8.17 is the lightest of any of those shoes right there. So it's a very lightweight shoe. It feels that way on your foot. You get really great turnover with this shoe. I feel like I'm able to take quick steps. My cadence can be high in them. There's also a cutout here. I don't think that really does anything other than save a little bit of weight. But I find I get a very high cadence in these, a very natural feel. The Lightstrike Pro, as far as that foam goes, in a softness scale, I would say that New Balance has the softest foam. New Balance, the foam in their shoes, the Fuel Cell, is by far the softest compound. It's soft. You can really sink into it, and it's bouncy, but not as responsive. Then Lightstrike Pro is kind of in between some of the other ones. I'd say Saucony, their original Power Run PB that's in this shoe, is one of the firmest of them. You get a lot of bounce from it, but it's a very firm foam. Nike kind of sits between there with the Zoom X. I find this to be, it actually to the touch feels firmer than Saucony's foam, but it definitely is more compressive and gives you more energy return. So I would say with the Adidas shoe, this one kind of feels like, to me, like a racquetball for the comparison. Like a racquetball's rubbery, but a little bit hard. So when you actually strike on this, you feel it compressing a little, and then it kind of gives it back to you quickly. So it doesn't really sink in as much. It's more of a bounce. So it kind of recovers quickly and bounces. So the sensation when I'm running with this is, it really is not assisting me as much as some of these other shoes, like the Vaporfly with that carbon plate, with the Zoom X foam. I feel like the shoe is working much more to help it be easy. Whereas that, I feel like, is kind of a strength and a weakness of this shoe, is it lets you run really naturally. I feel like it's not dictating my foot strike either. It's letting the runner decide how you want to run in this shoe. It feels very comfortable at that lower paces when I was warming up, except you can feel the midsole is basically saying, like, is that all you got for me? Put a little bit more in there and I'll give you some more back, which it does. So at easy paces you can do it, but you can feel that the shoe wants to go faster than that, being so light and the way that the midsole feels. When you get into the actual interval parts of it and you're running fast, this shoe flies. It feels great. It's very light, quick turnover. It feels like there's almost nothing on your foot. The upper kind of disappears to me, and you just get that racquetball. So as you're coming down, you get a little bit of that bounce, but not so much of assistance. So it really kind of, again, feels natural to me. Helps you, but doesn't feel like it's assisting you. So that kind of goes to the next part of this as far as the ride goes. I would say this is marketed as a 5K to a 10K shoe, and I think that's exactly what it is. If you were using this for shorter races, a 5K, a 10K, I feel like you can kind of get the most out of yourself, your own performance. The shoe's not going to get in the way. It's going to let you do your thing, as opposed to trying to intervene too much or change the way you're running. So I feel like this is really kind of lets you do your thing, but it's not helping you all that much. So what I actually found was, that being a strength and a weakness of this shoe. The run that I did today ended up being 11 miles in total. So at the beginning, it felt like, all right, this feels pretty good, but I have more, give me some more speed in the shoe. During the intervals, it felt great, but when I got towards the end and I was getting a little bit more tired, then I was actually wishing I had a little bit more stack and a little bit more assistance that I would get traditionally from a carbon plated shoe. So I think definitely for shorter distances, for tempo runs, for intervals, this shoe is great. But I wouldn't really want to take it to a half marathon, because in those later miles, that's when I feel like I need a little bit more assistance from the shoe. So is this the best tempo shoe? Yes and no. It depends on what you're trying to do. For intervals, for track sessions, for shorter races, I'd actually I should probably do this. I want to do a test where I run a 5K in the Vaporfly and run a 5K in this shoe over the same course, and see if it's the runner or the shoe, what difference it kind of makes. Because this one, I feel like being a little bit lighter weight, I might be able to do a little bit more myself. But then again, is the Vaporfly having that extra bounce, being a little bit more heavy, going to give me that additional assistance to keep my heart rate down, so that I end up with a faster time. So I'd be curious to see how these two stack up in a comparison. So I may do that at some point soon. The other thing with this shoe is it's $180. I think that's a lot of money for a kind of niche type shoe. This being could be a race day shoe for shorter races. So if someone's mainly racing, 5Ks, 10Ks, this might be your race day option. As far as a daily trainer, I'm going to want more cushioning, maybe some more rubber. Again, this gives you great grip, but we'll see how the durability stands up over time. You can get these on sale now. On sale, I feel like it's a really great option to add. But I mainly use this shoe for quick runs, for intervals. So I think I'm going to avoid it on longer runs. I definitely wouldn't take it up to a half marathon, just because I want a little bit more assistance. But how natural this shoe feels underfoot, I really appreciate. Just a couple comparisons I had here. This is the Rebel V2. I haven't done a review of this shoe yet, but this is another one that I put a lot of miles in. This, the fuel cell foam, very, very soft. I took these very flexible. I took this shoe out of the box and actually ran, I think, 10 miles or 13 miles, and it felt great the whole time. This one, the rubber on the outsole does not have the same durability. I'll check how many miles I have on this, but I'm starting to wear these ones down. But this is a much more comfortable shoe. If I was doing a tempo run like the one I did today, and ended up being over 10 miles long, this is gonna feel better to me, having that extra cushioning than the Takumi Sen does. But this shoe also feels a whole lot faster than this one does. So this is a lightweight shoe with a lot of cushioning. It's very comfortable for those longer miles, but I feel like it's harder to get that turnover and turn up the pace. This one being a little bit stiffer with the rods in there, and just the way that the upper fits, it feels like more of a race day shoe. So my overall verdict on the Takumi Sen 8 is that this is an excellent shoe. It's an excellent short distance racing shoe. How it stacks up to the carbon plate shoes, it really depends on what you're looking for in a shoe. This one, again, being more minimal, being more flexible, it kind of lets you do the running. The shoe's not running you, whereas I feel like some of the other ones are. So if you like that more of a natural feel, I feel like the Sen 8 is probably the lightest, most natural feeling shoe that I have, probably closer to more of those old school shoes that didn't try and do everything for you. So I feel like over short distances, this can really excel, but I definitely wouldn't take it longer than 10 miles, because then I'm going to be wanting for some of that extra cushion that some of the other shoes provide. Oh, and I made it pretty much to the end of this video, and this is my third video. I still didn't say like and subscribe. I know that's the YouTube thing I'm supposed to say. So it would be nice if I could grow this channel so I can make more videos for everyone. So if you can like and subscribe, that'd be much appreciated. And I'll see you in the next review. Thanks.